You're asking people to pay more money at a time when actually, it's never been more average. If they build a new stadium, they will be. I can't see a scenario where they wouldn't be putting up ticket prices.
When it's come and watch some of the worst football this club has ever put on for the most it's ever cost, that's a bit of a tough pill to swallow. Hello and welcome to Stretford Paddock. This is Off the Bar, brought to you by Green King Sport, and today we've got some very special guests on the podcast. Jay Marty, of course, as always.
Good to see. I'm glad you included me in this. I thought you were just a special guest, but no, you've pluralised it.
Yeah, you're very special as well.
Yeah,
I don't want you thinking you're not special just because we've got Chris Wheeler, of course, as well, the Manchester United correspondent for the Daily Mail. I would go as far as to say friend of the channel as well at this point, Chris.
You know.
You don't have to.
You can get top billing mine, but I'm from the channel. There we go. So.
How are you doing?
Good, all good. Yeah. New start, new chapter for the club at the moment, isn't it? So that's why we're here. Here we go again.
Here we go again. We've got loads to talk about. We've got transfers. Amorim potentially plundering his old club for strikers and other people as well. Obviously, we've got the latest on what's going on with sort of Marcus Rashford, all that stuff of him going away during the international break. Some of the youngsters as well, and just generally what it is like inside Manchester United at the minute, because it seems, doesn't it, Jay, that there's a lot of excitement and things moving in the right direction, but then also a lot of problems, like we need to clear stuff out, we need to change everything, it's going to be tough before it gets better. We're in a weird position at the minute, aren't we?
Yeah, we are, and I think you always pointed out it's made even sort of stranger in a way by the fact that we are some way into the season, but the season isn't over. It's not Christmas yet, there's still a lot of football left. Yeah, we are in the bottom half of the table, we're still in the bottom half of the table, but yeah, you're not going to go, well, the season's a write-off. No. Like, let's just give up, because we've still got the cup competitions. There's still the chance to get into those Champions League spaces. I know it's not going to be easy. So it's a bit weird at the minute. One sort of reason why myself and Joe and other United fans has been getting excited is because of the way Ruben Amorim is carrying himself. He's come in, he seems very charismatic. See it, just in interviews, he's got that sort of almost friendliness and warmth that sometimes it didn't seem like Erik ten Hag had. Yeah. What have you made of your first impressions? Because a lot of United fans just getting absolutely carried away, but what have you made from a sort of journalism point of view of Amorim?
Like you say, Jay, it has been a bit of a weird time, because it isn't just the coaching staff that are gone. I mean, from our point of view, a lot of staff at the club that we dealt with, aren't there anymore now as well. It's been a time of great churn, a great change. A lot of people have kind of moved on, and of course, as you say, that we've got a new head coach now. Amorim, it's only been a couple of weeks now, but what we're seeing of him is what we thought. He's very warm, this like megawatt smile that he comes in with, but clearly he's not a man that you're going to mess with. We were hearing right from the start, don't be fooled by this smile. He is a people person. He'll come in, he'll work well with the players, he'll be good with the media. As he was in Portugal, but he didn't get where he was in Portugal and have the kind of success that he had by being soft. And I think that's the message that came out of the club, definitely, is great guy, bit of warmth, bit of a bounce going around the place, but also clearly someone that knows what he wants and ultimately will try to get it. And if you're not on board, then you're in trouble.
In comparison to Ten Hag, because I think at the start, with every manager, I think the media and the fans are all kind of, okay, let's see what this guy's about. Some people more excited than others, but I think there was a general openness to him because of what he'd done at Ajax. I think as time went on, this sort of the stoic, if you're looking at the sort of maybe positive angle, or maybe slightly characterless side to him, certainly that we saw, he wasn't particularly warm or chatty or silly or smiley, the way that you see Amorim be a bit more. Just from meeting them both and speaking to both of them, do you immediately see a difference in that? Do you see a person that you think is warmer and will be able to, be a bit more of a, handle the media a little bit better potentially?
Definitely. I liked Erik, and he was maybe a bit warmer than people saw, than we kind of saw him on camera. Away from the camera, he did have a sense of humour. He was a good guy, but I get it. He came from Holland, where even they, said he's a little bit awkward in how he speaks. He was always a little bit wooden on camera, lacking in humour maybe. And Amorim, I think that's one element that he definitely brings to the table. That he comes in, he has this natural easy charm, with the players and with us so far. He does look like someone who'll be better in that respect. But I'm a little bit guarded about this, is because I think all of us, we've seen new guys come in, right from the start. I mean, it's been about 11 years now since Fergie, and we've seen the different types of coaches that come in. Most recently, Eric, and he was this progressive European coach. He was good with kids, and he was going to do this, and he was going to do that, and clearly things didn't really work out. So if I'm a little bit guarded about the whole smiles on faces, bounce on a training ground sort of thing, it's because we've seen it before, and I think we've learned now to take a deep breath, look at it, so let's see what happens, let's not get carried away with what's going on, and hopefully he's the real deal, but nothing's guaranteed whatsoever.
You mentioned there with the players. I know it's only early days, and you've obviously been at some of the training sessions. Do you see a good response from the players? Do you think that they are buying into what he's trying to do, even though it is only obviously early days?
Yeah, I think it is genuine. I think they are enjoying the sessions. I think they're enjoying being with him and his staff. Again, we've seen it before, so don't want to say get too carried away with it. But I think there was a genuine buy-in here from the players. I think some will know, but even now maybe, that they're not going to be there long term. So like any group of players, some will love him, some will be a little bit unsure, and some I'm quite sure will not be here this time next year. Quite a few of them maybe, and I think the club have got limited cash these days. That became clear yesterday from the financial results that came out. So they can't just do a group and branch change. They can't just get rid of Eric's signings and start again. They wouldn't want to anyway, but there needs to be, I think, even Amorim has said in these early days, some players I can adapt to my system, other players probably, aren't going to make it.
You mentioned there about the financial stuff, and we'll get to the ticket prices and some of the stuff that INEOS have been doing recently. But you also mentioned about players buying in, or players that won't be here. Is there any players in particular that you think won't last? Or if you don't want to talk about particular players, what positions do you think Amorim will immediately know he needs to strengthen as soon as possible?
Well, I mean, we talked on camera, didn't we, about how this works out, this 3-4-3, and who it benefits and who it maybe doesn't benefit. And you have a club here that's built on wingers, and you have a club that has a squad that's built with a lot of wingers in it, and a man coming in with wing backs, not wingers, and also these narrow attackers who aren't wingers, who are number 10s, who tuck in when the team's going forward. So there's an immediate awkwardness there that you've got a stable of wingers, and clearly there's not going to be room for all of them. I think it's good news for people like Mason Mount, who are a little bit out of sorts under Ten Hag. You can clearly see, where he's going to benefit, and you're looking at some of the wingers and saying, right, who's going to be in, who's going to be out. We talked before about Amad Diallo, and he's someone who immediately, got his first assist very early on, looks the part, looks like he's someone that can play that system. Equally, I think everybody will be saying Anthony, maybe he shouldn't have been there anyway in the first place. Where will he fit into that? I'd be amazed if Anthony this time next year is at the club still. I think he became a kind of symbol of the shortcomings under Erik Ten Hag. Has never done it, and he's definitely one, I think, who you'd be putting a big question mark over. And when you're talking about legs and pressing and energy, you've got to look at people like Casemiro. When you've got someone like Agate who's played under Amorim at Sporting, you've got obviously Kobbie Mainoo who's got a massive future. I think Casemiro is one more that you look at and say, well, it's probably stating the obvious that he hasn't got a huge future there.
One player we were talking about this earlier, and he was asked about was Marcus Rashford, and I think I'm paraphrasing, but it's basically we'll help him, but he's got to help himself as well. What do you think the future holds for Marcus Rashford? Because we talk about him a lot on this channel, and the first game he scores after 2 minutes, then he doesn't do a lot. It just seems like no one quite knows what's going to happen. No, and Amorim's not the first coach to face this issue. It goes back, several coaches now. We keep talking about Rashford being this young player. He's not. He's 27 years old now, and the money that he earns, he should be producing so much more. All of us know that. He knows that, and that it was interesting today the way that Amorim answered that question. It was very clever, because what he said was basically, don't put it all on me. Can I get the best out of Marcus Rashford? I can help him, but ultimately it's on Marcus Rashford. Don't put this on me. Marcus he's a big boy now. He's a big player for us. He has to turn up. He has to produce. I can help him do that, but it has to start with him. And as you say, that was the answer. It was, what about Rashford?
we can help him, my coaches can help him, but ultimately it's down to him to go and produce. Because as you say, perfect start on Sunday, 80 seconds gone, scores the goal, should be up and away, and then he just disappeared.
It's mad because Erik ten Hag, sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you there, but I remember on tour, one of the first presses that Erik ten Hag did, he had Marcus with him, and he'd had a bad season under Ralph Rangnick, and Erik ten Hag sort of almost made a point of singling him out and saying how important he was and a great example to the academy, and that obviously worked. Their relationship was good for that first season, wasn't it? But last season, Marcus Rashford didn't have a good season at all. And I think this season he's got to step up sooner rather than later.
He absolutely has to. And for me, not the best start. You've got the new coach has come in. He's in the international break. He can't actually be out on the grass for the first week because of his work permit. But he's around town. He's around the club. You've not been called up by England. You've got people like Martinez coming back early from South America to go and see the new coach. Bruno from Portugal, duty to come and see him. And Marcus had the chance to be back early, working hard, get in there, meet him, just get in with him basically. Is anybody common sense get in with the new boss, And yet he's seen in New York, Madison Square Garden, he's got his bling on. It's just all about looks, isn't it? It's about how that comes across. And for me, I think a lot of people, I know that Gary Neville mentioned it too, it gave off a bad vibe, that you got a new guy through a door, international break, chance to maybe score some brownie points early on, and what you're doing, you're getting pictured courtside at Madison Square Garden, giving it the big one, and it's not against the law. Again, I thought Amorim handled that very well. Asked about it, he said, I'm not going to castigate Marcus Rashford because he was allowed to go. If you're asking me, should he have been allowed to go? That's where I'd probably say no. Next time that wouldn't be happening. So he gave it the thumbs down without pointing the finger at Marcus Rashford. Do
you think there was, just to almost play devil's advocate, I get your point, but do you think there was any unfairness though in Marcus getting singled out when Casemiro did the same thing? And Casemiro's another player who's had question marks about his performances as well. And you might say, well, Casemiro's won 5 Champions Leagues and whatever. We haven't won them for United. No. And there's still a question there. And they both did almost the identical thing. I think Marcus maybe got a little bit more publicity. Do you think there's a similar thing, or do you think that's unfair? Or do you think Marcus has a bit more to prove? Or
again, I think perception's everything. I think being away with your family at Disneyland has a different look to it, to being kind of the big stretch this and stretch that, with your entourage, with your bling on, is a different kind of look. But you're absolutely right. I mean, both of them were questioned. Both of them went away to the same country. Both of them could have come back and done some work. I think Casemiro, because of who he is and what he's done, knows that he won't be there forever now. He doesn't have to. Marcus, it's a different matter. But again, what I would say is perception, I think, does matter. And I think not just being away, but what are you doing while you're away? What's the look? What's the image that you're giving off? And for me, it wasn't a great look. No.
You can't, Marcus, I think, no matter whether you defend or not, Marcus knows social media, knows how things get perceived, and I think that's the frustration thing. The frustrating thing is, no matter what is, I think if anyone knows how these things can go down, it's Marcus Rashford or the people around Marcus Rashford, or at least they should do.
I feel like, because if I personally, I think I sort of agree with what Amorim said. I know he's trying to handle it correctly, but I do agree with that. Rashford was allowed to do that, and potentially he shouldn't have been. But I do think that if that's me, I'd have someone saying to me, or I'd think it myself, maybe why don't you just go back a couple of days early, meet the boss, at least be there the first days there, because Rashford and Bruno are the faces of Man United, aren't they, in terms of on the pitch. Bruno's away with his international. Rashford isn't, because he don't get in England's team anymore. Be there, welcome him, not show him around, because obviously that's not your job, but be one of the first kind of meeting points he has at Manchester United. And also, Rashford's trying to prove to everyone that he's still the player we want him to be, and we're desperate for him to be. I think it would have been good if maybe someone had a bit of a word with him and said, maybe just go back and be there for the Monday. Because
make a smart move.
Yeah.
We're pleased that once again, Off the Bar is brought to you by Green King Sport, where football is more than a game.
On Sunday, United play Everton at 1:30. So if you're not going to the game, do the next best thing, get your mates together and go down to your local Green King Sport pub.
If you use the Green King Sport app, you'll be able to find your nearest pub and get 10% off your drinks for the entire game. And if you've not signed up before, you'll even get a free drink.
We'll put the link to the app in the description, so go and check that out. And thank you once again to Green King Sport. Obviously, that area of the pitch is one that's been under a lot of scrutiny. He was asked about it in the press conference before the Bodo Glimt game, and he said about scoring goals is an issue. It's obvious that it's an issue. We need the people in there to score more goals. But also that sort of lends itself to the question about bringing people in to do that job. You wrote about Victor Gyökeres and a sort of a handful of other sort of current or former Sporting Lisbon players as well. There's been mention of a gentleman's agreement that they won't sign him in January or approach him in January. What's your sort of understanding of the Gyökeres situation and when a potential timeline, if there was to be an approach, would be?
Yeah, I mean, it's clear he's a real talent, and obviously Ruben had the best out of him at Sporting Lisbon. He's been, numbers this season have been fantastic, and last season have been fantastic. I think he did say, didn't he, that he wouldn't go back for any players in January. I think more than that, I'm not sure the money's there to go back for players in January. Okay. It's never a good time to go and buy players anyway, particularly not big deals.
Yeah.
And historically we haven't done many, have we? There's in January is never a great time.
Big ones. Bruno's the only one that jumps to mind of like you've spent a lot of money.
Recent,
yeah.
You've got to go way back to like
Vidic and Evra.
Yeah, that's the one. Like 20 years ago almost.
Deals, though, they just happen to be great players.
Came in January.
Yeah. But more recently, it's been loans, and it's been like Vegas and Igalo and people like that.
Yeah, which kind of shows you that, doesn't it? So I don't think unless they are forced into it, unless other clubs, maybe it might be City or other clubs, make their move in January and they're forced to do something, would they move? I think January is looking like a pretty quiet time. Okay. I think they have to wait until the summer. But yeah, obviously the links are there. The links are obvious. You've got Amorim's come to United. You've got Viana, the sporting director at Sporting, is going to Man City. There's going to be a bit of tug of war there. There'll be other clubs in for him as well. So it's. But clearly they need. We've talked before, haven't we, about Harry Kane and when he went to Bayern. It's just. It felt like a missed chance. That it felt like an open goal, that one, and they didn't. They went with youth. They went with Højlund. I've not written him off yet, but clearly there's room for improvement there. I mean, Xerxes. What can you say?
Sorry, just to go back, but on Xerxes, because otherwise I don't want to not mention him. Is there a worry around United about Xerxes at the moment? Because I think that from a fan's perspective, I see people trying to defend him, but there's not. There are clearly issues there with how quickly he plays the game and his finishing ability. Are United worried about him? Do you know?
There has to be a concern because you've obviously brought him in for, was it, 36.5 million?
Yeah.
Again, going back to the point about Anthony, he's a Ten Hag signing who you look at the new system, so where does he fit in? Unless he's going to, unless we keep being told he's not a number 9, he's a 9.5, he's a 10, whatever. Right, so if he's not a number 9, where is he? Because he's not in the middle two, obviously. He's not a wing back, obviously. If he's not a number 9, he's only got those other 2 slots, and there's a hell of a lot of people contending for those 2 slots.
Going for those 2.
You've got your Brunos and your Mason Mounts, Christian Eriksen, and then you throw in all your wingers and people like Rashford. So I don't know in that system where Xerxes fits in unless he can just suddenly, just turn it on big time and he becomes a player that we haven't seen yet. So he clearly has link-up capabilities. He can be creative. Not enough, obviously. But could you say never? No, but it's difficult to see where he fits in. And then, not surprisingly, we're already seeing stories about him going out on loan in January. But they haven't.
It's mad that you're right. We do see a lot of those stories, but it is mad. Like he's already.
But I think what you are seeing with Amorim is someone who's coming in and saying, right, we are changing this. I can change it in the summer, or we can change it now. I'm changing it now. It's going to mean short-term pain, maybe mid-term pain as well. But he's clearly got the courage of his conviction to come in and say, I know what I want to do. I'm going to do it now. I'm not going to waste time. So are there players in that? I'm sure there are, but that he's already looked at and thought, they're not for me. They're not going to suit this system at all. I'm not saying Anthony's one of them or Xerxes, but those are 2 of the players you look at, and for me, you're not quite sure where they're going to fit in. And if that's the case, they haven't got the money to go and do much business. If they had to do something big in January, they would need to go and sell probably. And people like Xerxes and Anthony are 2 of the people in terms of earnings, in terms of what they get for a transfer fee or for a loan fee, who would get you a bit of money in to go and do some business.
You spoke about him, didn't you, as a wing back?
Yeah.
And A lot of people agreed with you, to be fair, in the comments. A lot of people saying there could be something there because, defensively, especially Ajax, he had good numbers or whatever. But so far, it doesn't look like the manager's.
No, I mean, he's on the bench, wasn't he? But yeah, we're playing wingers at wing back and left backs and right backs at centre back. It's all a bit up in the air at the minute. But I think if there was to be a place for Anthony, I can only see it being wing back. Personally. I agree. I pulled you away from the Gyökeres stuff just for a minute there with the Xerxes stuff. Do you think that Gyökeres would be interested in moving to United? Does he see that as a good move for himself, do you think? Because it's a tough one, isn't it?
Yeah, I'm not sure what he's thinking, but I would like to think Man United have got enough cachet still and pulling power that any player he's been at Coventry and Leicester, wasn't it? That he would see it as a massive move for him. Watching him last night against Arsenal, you do wonder, things didn't go brilliantly for him in England, and against Arsenal he had quite a tough time. So I don't know. This is where, going back to the kind of Kane issue, this is where, for me, if you've got a tried and tested Premier League striker, he's going to bang him in from day one. Why wouldn't you? And there's always a risk attached to these guys. And and here's one more. Eric wanted Højlund. He went and got Xerxes. It looks like Amorim will be bang up for getting someone like Gyökeres. But interesting, going back to the point that you made about Anthony there. Talking today to Amorim, he said, will you rotate? You went, absolutely, I'm going to rotate. He said, because I need to get my ideas into these players. So it serves me no purpose to have the same starting 11 on the pitch. And I need to get them on a kind of carousel almost, to get them on to the pitch, get them having game time. So it's possible that you will see Anthony getting some game time and Xerxes getting some game time. I'd like to think that Amorim will give them a chance. I'm not going to write them off, but if you're asking me now, looking at that squad, some of the players that you're thinking, it would be the people like Anthony, Xerxes, Casemiro, and I guess people have already, kind of decided that you probably can't have Maguire and De Ligt in the same kind of team, too similar. So you'd be looking possibly at Harry going next summer.
Yeah, it's the goals that worries me. It is. Yeah. That's the issue. I think we've got options. You mentioned there some of the players, and you mentioned that even someone like Mason Mount could fit into the system. Yeah. He could get a new lease of life. But we're just not scoring enough goals, and is that something you can just fix? Or do you need someone to come in?
I think you need people.
And if you need someone to come in, have you got to wait till the summer, which is a long way away, innit? Do you know what I mean? I mean, I saw Gyökeres against City and I saw him against Arsenal. And it was, against City, obviously did very well. Arsenal did struggle a little bit, but his numbers are ridiculous. They really doubled up on
him though, didn't they?
Arsenal? Yeah, they did.
They knew he was the guy to focus on. So hopefully, if we got someone, whether it's him or someone like him, if the system around him works well, if they're devoting a lot of resources to stopping one player, you'd hope we'd be able to exploit the gaps in other areas. But at the minute, it feels like if you stop our number 9 getting the ball, and no one else is going to score anyway. So you've won, or what is it, 12 goals or some 13 goals we scored in the league this season.
12 games. Yeah,
it's just not enough at all, is it?
To be honest with you.
Yeah.
I mean, I guess the hope would be also that Amorim will do some work with Højlund, definitely. And. It's perhaps too easy and glib to say because he's a Scandinavian striker, he's going to do the same thing with him as Gyökeres. But, hopefully that's what you're bringing him in for. You're bringing him in for that ability to work with young players, and he will improve players. And, who's to say by the time next summer comes around, if Gyökeres hasn't gone in the January window, could he get Højlund firing by then? Could Rashford be firing? An awful lot can change between now and next summer, and there's players in that squad who we know have got ability, who know have got more potential than they're showing right now, and hopefully Amorim can unlock some of that potential. And so if we're talking again, let's say in May, it's a different conversation.
Just the club generally at the minute, there's more stuff about different coaches getting new roles, but Amorim bought 4, 5, 6 coaches with him, whatever it was. There's every couple of weeks we open up the newspaper or we see one of your articles about this head of this person or recruitment this or analysis that or this. Like, it feels like every part of Manchester United over the last 6 to 8 months or 11 months has completely flipped it over sort of a cycle. Do you expect this to continue? When are we going to get a period of relative calm, do you think? Because the managers seem the big final piece on the kind of front of house side of things. But every week it seems like United have got a new analyst. This guy's gone from there back to Arsenal. Like, do you think we're going to see any sort of settled what's going on?
There has to be. I mean, it can't continue. That, obviously in any walk of life you get a certain amount of movement in terms of jobs and people coming and going. But clearly INEOS have come in and done a huge amount of chopping and changing at every level. Some to save money, some to improve what they would say the kind of levels. And yeah, it was just, I guess, unfortunate the way it worked out with the way that they brought in a new coaching staff for Eric in the summer, and the season began as it has done. Eric loses his job, and the coaching staff go with him. So that's the nature of the beast, unfortunately. But hopefully now, with the executive team and the coaching setup, and like you say, a lot of analysts and people in the academy and stuff, you'll see a little bit more kind of permanency, and even things like, I mean, we've been writing about. The loans manager, leaving, and possibly Michael Appleton coming in some kind of role. So I think there will be more changing, But Les Parry, is the loans manager who went out after a really good stint. But he's chosen to move on. I think Appleton could come in and some kind of guys there, but it's not finished yet, definitely.
It's just constant, isn't it?
Yeah.
Like the turnover's been. I know we've got new owners, and they seem to own or sort of run a lot more than people thought they might based on the percentage they own. It's like we've got new people run Man United, don't they? But it just feels like it's just been like turnover after turnover in every single department. Everything's changing. New stadium, training ground work starts immediately. This, that, manager. It's just craziness, isn't it? I wonder what that's like to work in for the players and the
building
staff.
work too, of course. You're also seeing all that churn coming along, So I think also in football it's interesting because people like to have people they trust around them, which is understandable. It's you're working at a very high end, and you want people around you that you know. So I guess at a high level you're seeing that with someone like Van Nistelrooy, where it's did a great job as interim manager, but I think it was always going to be on the cards that once Ruben came in, he's wanted his own people with him. He wouldn't particularly want, Rude on his shoulder. But kind of right down to other levels where, of all the coaching staff that have gone, the one that stayed has been Andreas Georgesson, of course, and Rude went, and René Hacker went, and the goalkeeper's coach, who I can't even say his name, is gone, and analysts have gone. But Georgesson stayed, and of course the reason for that is, or part of the reason for that is, that he has links with Jason Wilcox from Southampton. So I'm not saying there's anything untoward there. I'm just saying that it's only natural that Jason probably having had a hand in bringing in Georgesson, also had a hand in keeping him, because he's someone that he wants on the club, that he values from their time before, So that's the way football works, and it can be a bit brutal sometimes, but hopefully it pays off. There's been a huge amount of churn and change. As I said, staff that we've worked with for many years have gone, change at every single level, and you only hope that it's going to have the benefit that the club hope.
Yeah, it did feel like it was a matter of time of Eric tonight, didn't it? When he changed almost everything except the manager, like the player, the people above him, the coaches. It was just like everything changed except the manager, and maybe like one or two coaches, like you said. But it was a massive change, a massive overhaul.
That he was isolated. Then not only did he not have his probably two coaches in Steve McLaren and Mitchell van der Gaag behind him as he had done before, but also, like you say, every chain or every link in the chain had been changed apart from him, which meant if it still wasn't working, well, there's only one person to go and blame. And so which I think is fair enough. I think Eric, I'd have loved it to have worked out for him, but I think he was given every chance, and a lot of money in the transfer market, a lot of Dutch signings, a lot of ex-Ajax signings. I don't think he could complain that he wasn't backed. I think there was a lot of goodwill towards him, and it was a shame this didn't work out.
Yeah, I agree with all that, to be honest with you. You mentioned the academy, a player that we've spoken about a lot, that you've spoken about there. Is sort of, the probably the most spoken about young player we've got at the minute is Chidi Obi Martin. What do you think the future holds of him? Because there's even talk that maybe he could end up getting minutes this season. Sort of a new contract. Obviously, came with all this hype from Arsenal, scoring loads of goals, has done well when he's come to United as well. What do you think the future could hold for him?
Looks very bright. As we know, he gets a new contract on Friday. He turns 17 on Friday, so then he can have his first pro contract. That kicks in automatically, and why wouldn't you? And clearly, he's very highly rated. Came in from Arsenal, caused a right fuss there when he left them.
Just a bit which we love to see,
which is nice to see. So, and he's certainly living up to it. He's been banging in goals for fun. And it's interesting, again, going back to what I mentioned before about people having their, not kind of favourites, but everyone's got their own view. And it's funny watching, Eric brought some young players into the squad, onto the fringes of the squad. And then when Ruud got his chance before games, he brought some players in. And you saw, on like Sunday too, where early doors, Amorim bringing in certain players around on the fringes. And so, like we said before, goals are the most important currency in football. We can talk all day and all night about systems and this and that. If you've got a player who can put the ball in the back of the net, he is gold dust. And clearly this lad is somebody who seems to have a knack of scoring goals, and he seems to be a real hot prospect.
It'd be great, that one, if he could turn into even just someone who is a regular in the squad. When's the last time, I think, was it Danny Welbeck, the last time we had a number 9 who made any real impact on the first team? It's been such a long time.
Yeah, Mason was a different type of player. Really, Mason played in different positions. He could play as a 9, or he could play on either side.
But it is
a rarity.
Yeah,
though,
I think
right.
Mark Hughes is the last academy player that played a lot of games up front for United, and that's pushing 40 years ago that he sort of came through. Like, it's not something that United have managed to do throughout the history enough when you consider the emphasis we have on young talent and the academy. That sort of number 9 through the academy has been something that sort of eluded us a little bit, isn't it?
Yeah, I think it's very difficult when you're a youngster to come through and be that guy for United. I think you need that sort of spell away or a few low moves.
Being built up.
Yeah, and even then you usually got 3 or 4 people in front of you. The one advantage Chido Obimane's probably got right now, I know we're sort of getting ahead of ourselves, but there isn't that many number 9s you can say are at United who we know are successful, or that you pin your hopes on being here for the next 10 years. So that could go in his favour.
To be fair though, thinking about all the big teams, not many of them have got number 9s anywhere near the tops of their top scorers who were academy players. I wonder if there is something to the fact that you have to build at a Coventry and a Sporting or a Dortmund or whatever, especially in that position that's so reliant on confidence and getting your foot in the door. I wonder if maybe coming through at a top club is almost a hindrance to strikers at times. I don't know, hopefully not with him, of course. But you mentioned about all the things that INEOS have done and some of these cost-cutting measures. One thing that's been a bit of quite a big thing this week is the putting up of ticket prices. I think starting immediately, isn't it? It's you often see a review at the end of the season, or season ticket prices have been stalled or frozen again. Everything's £66 minimum now. Is that right? Is that what's going on there?
For here, yeah. I mean, obviously we want to see how it all pans out, but clearly it's not good news for fans.
No.
Things are going up, and yeah, I mean.
But that's a lot. It's going up by a lot. It's going up by like 50%.
It's really worrying as well. The thing that worries me about this, it's ridiculous straight away. Straight off the bat, this is asking too much. It's too costly, and they need to rethink it. I know it's not just a Manchester United problem. There's a protest planned, I think, with Everton fans. They're against it as well, and fans across the Premier League. But then, when we're looking ahead and thinking we might have a new stadium to pay for, is that going to see an increase in season ticket or ticket prices? And if so, what's that going to look like? And is that going to get to the point where people like us who go to the game go, do you know what? Can't afford it. Because I know a lot of lads, just lads and girls as well, who were just sort of thinking like that already, who going, you know what, this is probably past what I'm able to spend.
Well, it is when you're looking at the standard of football out on the pitch at the moment. You're asking people to pay more money at a time when actually, it's never been more average. And
it's a fair point, really,
and the stadium's obviously not in great shape. And I think absolutely damn right. If they build a new stadium, they will be. I can't see a scenario where they wouldn't be putting up ticket prices.
With all of these things, unfortunately, if you win titles and you win games, it's all right. Like, not that people can just afford to spend £1,500 on a season ticket or whatever it might be with a new stadium just because you're winning. If you can't afford it, you can't afford it. But like you said, when it's come and watch some of the worst football this club has ever put on for the most it's ever cost. That's a bit of a tough pill to swallow. And I think, like you said, not that United have been this sort of bastion of socialist ideas, but there's always been a leaning towards that kind of way. And, they're not the most expensive tickets. Even when we were the best team in the country, they weren't the most expensive season tickets. And you can get a bottle of beer for £4. And there are some attempts to not completely Wembleyfy everything, where it's £8.50 a pint because they can and they'll get away with it. There are some elements that, do you think we're going to lose that? Do you think it's just pure business now? Off the pitch, obviously on the pitch you need a bit of whatever. Do you think that's what INEOS are going to bring? Ruthless business?
I think we always knew that. I think INEOS, that's what they were known for, and I think what they would say in their defence is they would say they inherited a situation that had to change. This couldn't, this club could not keep hemorrhaging money. This club could not keep just paying out whatever millions and millions lost every year. They were brought in to do what they, in many ways, do best, which is to go and streamline, to turn it into a successful business. Doing that can be painful, and it has been painful, and they've taken some very, very hard decisions. And I'm sure they would argue that it had to be done. And in many ways, you've got the Glazers kind of sat back, still kind of coining it in and getting none of the flack right now. I mean, they're kind of happy as Larry, And I'm sure, the INEOS way, they would be looking at it and they'd be saying, well, at least we've stepped forward. At least we're doing something to address this. Something had to be done. We've stepped in and we're doing it. And it won't make us popular right now, but it's for the best of the club. Going back to your question, Joe, about, the cost of a pint and all the rest of it. No one knows, but if they go the kind of Tottenham route, the Wembley route, and you have this, unbelievable new stadium, £2 billion, and I'm sure it'll be more than that by the time they're finished. Are we talking about, 8, 9, 10 quid pints? Are we talking about paying for parking? Are we talking about, everything going through the roof? Every chance. I mean, we don't know yet, but it's hard to see how it doesn't go that way.
What do you think, Jake? Because you go to more games than I do. You've been a season ticket holder, for a long time, and I go to games every season, but I don't go to every home game like you tend to do. Like, what do you make of it? I know you mentioned your mates there, but are you worried about this? Is this something that sort of pisses you off?
Yeah, a little bit, and I'd have to look into it a little bit more because I'm thinking, I take my kids sometimes as well, and if you're going to start doing that, and that's going to cost, well, not if you're going to start doing that, but that's going to start costing you a lot more to take your kids. Are they just not going to get the opportunity to go, or am I going to think, what, I'm not going to go, I'm not going to take anyone else? Because it does get to the point, I love going to United. It's always big, one of the few social things I do is go to a game. I don't tend to go out drinking or whatever, but I'll go to the game. But you might get to a limit with it, and I feel a little bit like that. And especially if some of my mates who go with are going, and I'm not going to bother anymore, and that sort of spoils it a little bit for me. And like you've all mentioned, that the football's not great, and there's this romantic idea, well, you should go no matter what. You're only human. Yeah. If you're watching poor results and your rivals are beating you and it's just not enjoyable and your mates aren't going anymore and it's costing you a packet to get there, I'm very lucky in the sense that I can get a tram to the ground and it takes me half an hour or whatever. Some people are travelling, a lot of people are travelling, and I feel for them as well. If you're travelling up and down the country and you're getting fleeced already on, trains and other stuff, and now the tickets and the football ain't great, then I can understand completely why fans would say, no, it's not for me anymore. So I think INEOS have got to be careful because you can't take it for granted. There's always this element with United fans. You can take it for granted that no matter what, Old Trafford will always have at least sort of 60,000 plus fans in it, even if we're terrible and we're getting beat and it's a dead rubber in the Europa or whatever. You're always going to have a certain amount of fans there, but that can change. It can change quickly, and I think they've got to be very careful because when it comes to renewal time, there'll be a lot of people who won't renew. Basically, we're having these conversations, going, "That's it, I'm done." And I've always had that in the back of my mind, especially as I get a little bit older. Is it going to get to a point where I'm like, I'm going to leave the season ticket now, but I'm not there yet. But it's not the wind out of my sails. It really has.
There were no shortage of people taking up those tickets, and so I think in the short term they've got the demand to go and put bums on seats. But but who are those people, and are you in danger of losing your traditional match-going fan? I mean, obviously, we know we're not going there rattling, walking down the streets and stuff. Things have changed anyway, but do they continue more down that route that you kind of get into a very sanitised fan base? The kind of, you like day trippers, basically, where you're going to the game and you lose that heart and soul. And I guess it's the essence of what a lot of owners have to go and face is you want to obviously, be fluid, that you want to get the revenue coming in, but you don't want to price out your match-going fans, or hopefully you don't want to price out your match-going fans, because they are the heart and soul of the club,
Yeah, I think because it should be open to everyone. I always think, if you're coming from somewhere else, or you're on holiday, or you want to buy an expensive ticket, and you can do that, but that shouldn't be at the expense of, no one's more of a fan than anyone else, regardless of where you're from. But if you are someone who's working class, who lives in Trafford, or who lives near the ground, you shouldn't be excluded from going. That's the thing. It's everyone should be able to go. But if it is, I think we're still waiting on official confirmation, aren't we? But it seems like it's looking like it might be 66 quid with no concessions. An 8-year-old pays 66 quid to go and watch Man United. If you take, if your family goes, you're pushing 400 quid there when you look at tram fare, and maybe someone wants a bottle of Coke or some, whatever. That's absurd. That can't be just how it is, because then there's only these people who have got a lot of money or whatever can go to the game. That shouldn't be the case. It should be everyone.
You've got to tread carefully with that. I met up with my mates last year for Christmas. We met up, we were all chatting, and there was a couple of us around the table who were saying their kids had become blues. Now, obviously, that's not happening in our house because I refuse to let it. But they were saying they're only the young kids, and they're seeing City winning trophies on the telly all the time. And they said a couple of my mates were gutted and you know what, it's the worst case scenario. They've turned to the dark side. I was like, oh my God, thankfully my lot are all Reds, and they're all bitter Reds, which I love. But you've got to be careful, man. You can't just take, like I said earlier, you can't take it for granted. And some of these figures that you see bandied about are, eye-opening. And going back to the whole stadium thing, if this whole thing about making it an event when you go to the game, there's lots to do. At the minute, that isn't the case. You go to Old Trafford, there's nothing to do. You go to some stadiums and there's all these different foods you can eat, and there's different entertainment, and there's all sorts going on, and you might get there 3 hours early and fill your time, and it's all great. There's nothing going on at Old Trafford at that stadium, really. There's zero other than the actual football. So if you're going to try and make it cost more, you've got to offer people something. Now, if that's going to come with a new stadium, how long is that down the line? Is that 10 years down the line when you're going to have this wonderful new stadium? And also, in the meantime, we don't know if it's going to be a redeveloped Old Trafford or a new stadium. It looks like a new stadium, but if it is a redeveloped Old Trafford as well, you're going to have to lose some fans because you're building whilst the game's going on. So it's a dangerous time for INEOS. You've got to be careful with how they go about this, because they could end up damaging the fan base. And going back to your point, Chris, about day trips and stuff like that, I get all that, and people want to go to the game, fair play, but also it can have a knock-on effect if you've not got that atmosphere. It can have a knock-on effect if you're 100%. Just pricing out the people that are likely 100%. To make the most noise. Where Old Trafford doesn't become a ground that's intimidating to the opposition. I know it's probably not anyway, but we did have a spell where, even under Ten Hag, where it was a bit of a fortress, you could lose that, and this is why it's testing time for him.
Yeah, it's definitely right. I think we've
covered everything.
We've covered everything.
Unless there's anything we've missed.
No, nothing I can think of. I think we're just about the whole bingo card there. But it's interesting times, guys. It's a lot of change going on, a lot of uncertainty right now about how things are going to go on off the pitch. Maybe that's a good thing. Maybe there's been too much too much staying the same, not enough, people getting hold of it and to go and turn it around. But it certainly feels like we've kind of reached a bit of a crossroads now. So
there's a lot of things happening at Man United, isn't there? Whether we like them all or not, you can't argue that we are a club that's massively changing from what we were even 2 years ago, let alone 15 years ago. So hopefully it works out for the best. Thank you very much.
Busy anyway, doesn't it? Gives you something to write about.
Exactly right. Thank you very much for joining us at home. Thank you again, Chris, for coming on as always. Pleasure. Thank you, Jay. Thank you to myself as well. I'll do that. Thank you for watching. We'll see you in a bit.